Welcome to Backstage with Richard Ridge. My guest is actor, director, producer, and photographer Joel Grey. For 7 decades, he has worked effortlessly between stage, film, and television. He is known around the world for his Tony, Golden Globe, and Oscar-winning performance as the MC in Cabaret. And now his new memoir entitled Master of Ceremonies has just been released. Please welcome Joel Grey. First of all, thank you so much for doing this.
Well, it's the first time that we've ever spoken except in a line.
Sure, on a red carpet.
Right, for years.
I love it. And thank you for letting us do it here in your beautiful home.
Thank you.
Now we have to talk about this, which is your new memoir, which of course is Master of Ceremonies.
Oh, you don't really want to talk about it.
Oh, yes, I do. And I think I told you, I read this, the first time I read this, I read it in one sitting, straight through. It is probably one of the best showbiz autobiographies that's ever been written because you are so honest the way you tell your story. It's so inspirational, it's courageous. How did you come about, Joel, to write the book?
Well, I kind of always thought I would write something. I was always a great fan of autobiographies, starting with Laurence Olivier, and I've read every theater biography probably ever, and just thought that I would do it. Just was some kind of almost like a calling.
Yeah.
And actually the thing that tipped it was Andre Agassi's memoir. It was, first of all, it was so beautifully written. And second of all, it started about all the pain he had in his childhood and how he got through it. And Master of Ceremonies has double meaning. It means mastering the stuff that you need to do in order to get to the next place. And sometimes those places are very difficult.
Yeah.
And then he ended up finding his way through marriages and romances and came out a champion and kind of a wonderful man, I thought. And I said, well, that was a dark childhood. And mine was somewhat dark too.
Yeah. How long did it take you to complete the book?
About 2 years. But you can say that I've been thinking about it for a long time.
Yeah. You know, what I also love about the book is you show Joel Grey the performer and you show Joel Grey the man, the whole personal journey and your self-discovery that you're going through at the same time.
I'm afraid they're interconnected.
Yeah, but a lot of people don't do that in books. They'll just show, here's my razzle-dazzle side of what I do, but you were just so honest with this. Was it cathartic for you to write it?
Yes, painful and cathartic.
So, have you gone back and read it through again?
I have.
And when you read it now, when you've read it again after it's all done, what goes through your mind when you read the book?
You came through.
Yeah.
You know, you survived all the stuff that most people who have a long career in the business. It's just truly a matter of up and down and challenges and hardships and thrills.
Well, I want to go back to the beginning. Where did your love for theater begin? And what was that defining moment for you when you said, I want to be an actor?
I was 9 years old, and I went to see a play, a children's theater play, and almost immediately I said to my mother, I want to do that. And she was good enough to enroll me in the theater class for children. And I knew I was home.
Yeah.
And then I was taken into the adult section of the theater, which is 100 years old, won a Tony this year, the Cleveland Playhouse. And I was instructed by people with a calling who loved the theater, who made it their lives. And I always thought that was what I was going to do. I was going to be a regional theater actor, playing all kinds of roles, and sometimes the lead. Where are you going? Have a seat.
He's like, I've heard this story, right?
Yeah. No, he's good.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It was everything to me, and it gave me a place in the world that was different from being small and vulnerable and in the midst of a rather wild and woolly Jewish childhood, with all those aunts and uncles and everybody wanting their moment in the spotlight.
Sure. Because you dedicate the book to one of your earliest mentors, which is K. Elmo Lowe.
Yes.
Tell me what that person means to you and what those first early years of the Cleveland Playhouse meant to your career.
I was 9 years old and I auditioned for this play on borrowed time, which I directed at Two River 2 years ago. And I remember reading, and he said, "Mr. Katz, you're an actor." I believed him.
Yeah.
I had to believe him, otherwise how would I get on, right?
Yeah.
But it meant so much, and that has saved me over the years. And then I always want to be good enough to make him proud.
Yeah. Because those were those years that really set you what you wanted to do with your life.
And
vocation.
kept me going.
Yeah.
Kept me wanting that. And then I had a couple of left turns in the nightclubs and couldn't get a job in the theater.
Yeah.
It was another time in the theater. Now they hire people from nightclubs first.
Yeah. Well, you talk about the nightclubs. You so vividly talk about those early years. Your life played like an MGM movie. I'm sure it didn't when you wrote this, but I mean, first you got to perform with your dad, the great, Mickey Katz. What did you learn the most about your craft from your dad with those years of performing with him on stage at such a young age?
Well, his values and his idea that the audience that comes is entitled to everything. They deserve. I mean, he used to play for dances and bar mitzvahs, and he would be playing till the last person left the dance floor, no matter how late, how tired he was. He just felt a tremendous honor and obligation to, fulfill his job.
Yeah. So it was all about giving to the audience, too, what the audience
Right.
expects and what you should give to them. Going back to, those nightclub years, you were discovered by Eddie Cantor in your dad's show. I mean, this stuff doesn't happen. I mean, he put you on the Colgate. He put you on his TV show.
Did you ever see it?
Yes, I watched it on YouTube. You're terrific. And then reading about it
It's so
in the
embarrassing.
book, to you maybe, not to any of us.
But I was 19. I didn't know how to sing or dance.
Yeah.
I just jumped. And I got away with it because I guess I had a passion that I didn't know that was carrying me through because I thought they were crazy. And I was a big success from that.
Don't do this, don't do that, it's all I hear at home. Eat your food, make your bed, it's whirling in my dome. And so I run to have some fun, 'cause youth is here to stay. Oh, I got a girl that's out of this world, and we dance the night away.
We're going to get through some highlights of your illustrious career, because you have some career, my friend. So just tell me whatever comes to mind, a story, a memory. Let's start with your Broadway debut in Neil Simon's Come Blow Your Horn. Oh, favorite memory. You wanted that show, didn't you?
Yeah, I wanted to be on Broadway. And then that show was so goddamn funny. I mean, the laughs were a mile a minute, and I was on the stage with some pretty tough actors, Lou Jacoby, Pert Kelton, and Hal March, and they took no prisoners. And I had never stood on the stage, in the Broadway stage, and heard such laughter. And I remember my eyes were sort of like, my eyes were vibrating from the laughter.
Yeah. But I'm sure you learned a lot from those seasoned pros too.
I did.
When you were up there. You did that
I
for
did.
a year?
A year.
Yeah.
Right. And Ron Rifkin was my understudy.
Who's one of your dearest friends, right?
He is. All these years.
Isn't that great how the theater works? That you start out with these people either, understudying them or working
Bernadette,
with them.
the same.
Bernadette, yeah. Well, we'll get into her, but then Stop the World, I Want to Get Off was another great musical where you played Little Chap.
Right. I replaced Anthony Newley, and I did that for 3 or 4 years. It was a great part. I learned a great deal, and I had a lot of success with it in LA.
Yeah.
And on tour. And I came back to New York, and there was no work. None. Zip. I had 2 children by this time. And I got this horrible job in Jones Beach, at the Jones Beach Marine Theater, where Louis Armstrong came on for 10 minutes and did a few songs, but we were trying to do a show with a book. Oh, call that a book? A Mardi Gras, it was called. And June Taylor choreographed it. You know who that is?
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
And it was horrible. We rode 3 hours practically on the highway to get there, the whole cast, and then 3 hours back, and I never saw my kids, and it was so amateurish. I thought I'd die. And when it was over, there was nothing offered. And I thought, this is the end. I'm going to do something else. I can't go through that again.
You played a pirate, right? I'm sure you talk so vividly in the book too about riding back and forth of a Long Island Railroad, Long Island Highway, Long Island Expressway. I'm just trying to figure out what's going to go on with my career.
Mm-hmm. And my life.
Yeah. But then Half a Sixpence was after that?
No,
Yeah.
Half a Sixpence was during the Stop the World
Okay.
replacement period.
Replacement period's a good time to do too, right? Oh, so Mardi Gras was after.
Right.
Oh gosh. Okay, so.
After those successes.
Yeah, totally.
And so I thought that was it, and I was ready to look for some other way to make a living when the telephone rang, and Hal Prince had become a friend years before, and he said, Jolie, he's the only person I have ever allowed to call me Jolie. Jolie, I'm doing a new show. Remember I told you about it? I said, oh yeah, right, I am a camera, right. So I was sleeping. And he said, well, we're doing a musical version of this, and I think there's a good part in it for you. And that's it. That was that. It was the only thing I didn't ever audition for.
Wow. Well, Chita Rivera told me that the hardest and challenging role for her to find was Aurora in Kiss of a Spider Woman, because she said in the script she was only fragments. Fragment 1,
Right, she
fragment
had
2,
right.
fragment 3, and she said, I don't want to be a fragment, I want to be the whole of something. When you first got your Cabaret script, the MC was totally underwritten, wasn't he? I mean, you went sort of through the same thing of trying to find this man, how he was going to fit into the show?
Yes, yeah, for me as
Yeah.
an actor. I mean, I could have just gotten up and done the numbers, but then there wouldn't have been a person
Yeah.
there, and that person scared the shit out of everybody, including me.
Do you remember that breakthrough for you when you thought you were on the right track with him, of discovering where you were going to go with the MC?
I tried this awful thing, this dreadful thing at a rehearsal,
Yeah.
a run through, and I did it, and I remembered all those second-rate comedians I'd seen years before, and I put all of their dreadful tricks and shtick and bad acting and overdone everything into this character for this rehearsal. And we finished, and I was so embarrassed that I ran away to the back of the theater and hid. Minutes later, there's a hand on my shoulder, and it's Hal, and he says, "Jolie, that's it."
Isn't it great when you take those steps, but you also, when I asked you what you took away from those nightclub years, you probably had all this stuff inside you that you could use
That I
this
learned,
now, that
right.
you learned.
That was the reason.
Yeah.
If there was a reason
Yeah.
for all that pain,
But
it
you also-
was to prepare for this role that was so important politically
Yeah.
and in every way. It really, he was a messenger of hideousness. He was like Hitler
Yeah.
in that way. He said, "Come, I'm going to put a bread on every table." And they followed him.
Yeah.
And the audience, that was the trick, to get the audience, as scary as he was, to follow you and laugh and have a good time.
See? Well, let's talk about the legacy of Cabaret. You worked with two of the finest visionary directors ever. First with Harold Prince on stage, and then Bob Fosse in the film. What was it like working with those two men? Totally different.
Well, it was, we were making theater, Hal and the company and myself, and it was daring and scary, and it took a lot of trust from all of us, but it ended up telling the right story and being the right cautionary tale, and so we were very proud of it. And then Bob Fosse turned out to be, a couple of years later, the director, and he didn't want me in the movie. He wanted to do it with everybody new. He didn't want any vestiges of the theater, which is fair for a film director. But why he was so dead set against me, except maybe that it was that I was a part of that, it was really tough.
Yeah.
Until he came, I think they saw a lot of people, and people were rumored, and it was 6 weeks before Munich, and Bob Fosse came into the studio heads, all of them, and Fuhrer and Martin, and Marty Baum was the head of the studio, and Manny Wolf. And he said, "Well, gentlemen, this is the moment. It's either Joel Grey or me." And Marty Baum stood up and said, "Then it's Joel Grey." I don't think that's ever happened.
No.
You know, the director is God,
Sure.
so thank God.
And you're only one of 8 actors to ever win the Tony and the Oscar for a role you created on stage.
I read that somewhere.
Yeah, I think I read it here too. It was after Cabaret. You left Cabaret to do George M.
Right.
That was a big decision for you to make, wasn't it?
Yes. But I was, entranced with James Cagney and that movie and those songs. So I took a chance. It was that or going to London, which I'd always wanted to do too, to do Cabaret, which was a sure thing.
Sure.
And this was risky. And I guess I'm always taking risks, despite my fear.
All the good ones do. Everybody, all the jobs you've taken, as I look through your career. No, but everything was a risk. It seems like, why do
You seem like a masochist.
No, but well, I guess we all are to a certain extent, but you have to be, because you want to keep, doing something you haven't done before. Otherwise,
Yeah.
you're just repeating something, right?
Right, you want to grow.
Yeah. You learned to tap dance during that show, really tap dance during
did.
George M., right?
I did. And I couldn't before, and I can't now.
Are you serious?
Not really.
You did in your act for a while after George M., right?
Yes, but
Yeah.
minimal. This dancing in George M. was heavy duty. Joe Layton, great stuff.
Yeah. And you rehearsed every night your big tap number downstairs at the Palace every night before you went on, right?
With stage light, right?
Wow.
To make sure
Yeah. All right.
that they were in my feet.
Sure.
That's what they say.
It's like that muscle memory, making sure it's in your feet, right? But you loved playing that man, didn't you?
I did, actually. I thought
Yeah.
he was very interesting and complicated.
Yeah.
And I loved singing those songs.
Yeah. Chicago, playing Amos. You turned that down first when you were offered that.
I did. Because I'd seen the original, and I thought that the character, when I saw it, was maudlin. Not because of the actor, just it was the attitude that everybody had about that character. And he was a big, tall, heavy-ish, dumb mechanic. You could believe that. And I thought, a mechanic? And then I thought, the whole idea of being cuckolded all through the show and not feeling sorry for himself, just accepting
Yeah.
that that's his place, that had a kind of heroic, and stayed loving her under the worst circumstances.
Yeah.
He was the only character that was, actually vulnerable and human and something we could connect with.
You had a good time playing that run, didn't you?
I did. I loved everybody in it.
Yeah.
And it was not supposed to be a success. It was, so that was fun.
Another one of those moments, it just started out as something going to encores, because I know Barry and Fran told me, they were like, we couldn't raise money to move it. And now look at it, it's going to celebrate its 20th anniversary next year. Of course, you worked with Anne Reinking in that, and you also worked with Anne Reinking when you did a musical which I loved at the Palace, which is Good Time Charlie.
It's a good cast album, too.
Yeah, it's a great cast album.
Yeah.
What was your experience like with that? It wasn't a hit, but it's a beautiful score.
Yes, and beautiful costumes.
Yeah.
And a beautiful set that was very difficult to work on. And I don't know, whether that had anything to do with it or you never know quite with something that appeals to a lot of people and yet not enough to have a run.
Yeah.
It's not like the people came and walked out or the people came and didn't like it. They did.
The same thing with the Grand Tour, a Jerry Herman score, one
Yeah.
of his most beautiful scores. Great role for you. I mean, just
Yes.
a wonderful show. And again, just not enough people, or what was your whole experience like with working with Jerry and working on the Grand Tour?
I loved that show too.
Yeah.
I love that character. So I have no je regrette rien. I didn't think I'd ever say that.
I love that. Piaf's in your future, I think. And then there's the phenomenon known as Wicked. Nobody ever would have thought.
Right.
And that was another show you had to be talked into doing, right?
Right.
Numerous times. Tell me, was it Joe Mantello and David Stone
Yes.
who
yes.
came to your house a few times?
This house.
Okay.
Right here. And they'd said that they'd always seen me, and they'd asked me to do some of the backers auditions. And I just didn't think it was enough of a character. And there was also no dancing, and I needed another song that expressed how much he loves his daughter.
Yeah.
Sentimental Man was not in the show.
So he evolved all during this process.
Yeah. And the dance number
Yeah.
evolved.
I need to talk about The Normal Heart, which is one of my all-time favorite plays, and I know this show means the world to you. First playing the role of Ned, and then of course doing that beautiful concert you did the one night in California, and then you co-directed the 2011 revival.
And we did a concert
Yeah.
here first
Yeah.
at the Walter Kerr. Do you know who was in that?
Is that Glenn Close?
Glenn Close.
Yep.
Joe Mantello, John Benjamin Hickey, Patrick Wilson, Michael Stuhlbarg. I mean, it was unbelievable, and it was the thing that sort of got everybody all excited about taking it to Broadway.
Yeah.
And then George and I co-directed that beautiful play.
Well, take me back to the first time when you played Ned. You had gone to the public theater to see it. What do you remember about that day after you walked out of there after seeing The Normal Heart?
Devastated.
Yeah.
I was devastated, like everybody in the audience, and I couldn't get it out of my head. And just, I don't know. I saw Larry Kramer in the lobby, and I said, if anything ever happens with this play where there's something for me to do in it, on the road or blah. And he listened, and 2 weeks later, Joe Papp called me that Brad Davis was tragically ill with AIDS, and could I come in 10 days or 2 weeks? And Michael Lindsay Hogg worked with me, like, it was so helpful, and it was great. It was unlike anything I have ever done, because it was sort of like it was happening, because it was.
Yeah.
And the Times wasn't doing anything about it or believing it. And people were screaming and crying in the audience, moaning, and it was a life-changing play. And I'll never forget it. That was what the Playhouse was about.
Every actor who I've spoken to who's worked on that show said it is their most memorable piece and the most life-changing for them, the way they looked at their life, self-discovery for them.
Yeah.
That was sort of an early self-discovery for you with this play, wasn't it?
Yes, I had just come to be divorced, and recognizing in speaking those lines of this great gay activist that I knew that I had that bisexuality or homosexual, whatever it was, that was somewhat subtle. And I always thought that my marriage would be forever. And when I got married, I was totally in love with my wife and wanted children from the get-go. So when that change came, it was something I had to pay attention to and come to include in myself and honor.
But I want to thank you for what you did in early 2015 of dealing with your sexuality and talking about it and how you deal with it so beautifully in your book. Was it a life-changing moment for you when you decided to do that in early 2015?
Well, most everybody in my life knew about it.
Yeah.
And my children, and it just seemed like it was the right time. The world had changed. I came up in a time when it was, if you had any feelings like that, you didn't dare express them, and you were somewhat of a freak. And so those ideas, and the fact that you couldn't have a career or a family, and now men and women, gay men and lesbians, they have children.
Yeah.
It's so wonderful.
You know, when you were talking about co-directing The Normal Heart, you were also working on Anything Goes.
I was.
How did you wear both hats? I mean, here you
Well,
were.
for the most part, I was just, talking with George,
Yeah.
and playing 8 shows a week with Sutton Foster, and screaming, laughing, and loving working with Kathleen, and
Yeah.
that was a terrific show.
Were you sold from the very first day? Did someone have to tell you, would you like to do this, Joel?
Oh, I thought I was wrong for the part again.
If you're ever down a well, ring my bell.
If you ever catch on fire, send a wire.
If you ever lose your teeth when you're out to dine, borrow mine.
It's friendship,
Friendship, just a perfect friendship.
when other friendships have ceased to gel.
Eyes will still be swell. Lot of hip, hip, hip.
You know, you have this wonderful career where you work effortlessly between stage, screen, and television, and you've acquired this whole new audience through the stuff you've done now on film and TV, with the stuff like films like, you know, Dancer in the Dark and Grey's Anatomy and, you know, CSI and all of these things. What do you love about that medium, the different mediums of TV and film? Do you enjoy working in them?
I do. And when they're good,
Yeah.
you're really grateful that there's something like that has a record. I've been thinking about going to the New York Public Library and maybe looking at some of the early footage that I've never done. So I was at an event the other night celebrating the library, and I thought, I gotta get over there.
Do you watch yourself when you do things, like on film and
Usually.
TV? Okay.
Usually.
But you want to go back and see some of this earlier, the theater stuff and some of the
Yeah.
TV stuff you did?
Well, especially since I've written this book,
Yeah.
I think I can look. And especially since I'm so happy.
Yeah. What are you the proudest of in your life?
My family and some of the work I got to do, and my dog, and my dad, and my mother gave me a sense of art, along with a sense of horror. But she didn't know any better.
So my final question is for you. What is the best bit of advice that you've been given that you live by?
Tell the truth. That's the secret in the theater for sure. And it's like the very thing that I learned from K.L. Below when I was 9. It takes me a while.
I thank you. I wanted to do this for the longest time. You and I have spoken many times on all the red carpets, at every opening, every major celebration you've had, but
That's
it's so
true.
nice to have been able to be invited into your home.
Yes, the next time we speak to each other, it'll be different.
It will be.
Right.
And
We'll
everybody,
have had history.
history. Go out and get Master of Ceremonies. Thank you, my friend.
My great pleasure.